I know you've been getting a lot of chatter about this, and we've been seeing this too in our programming as far as like what people are switching into. How to transition from off-season to in-season training, or maybe not even off-season training. Maybe some people do a completely different. Maybe they're not really off-season golf fitness training, and maybe they're just kind of off and they're going into in-season training.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to start with right there. I think the off-season training, it's equally both season off-season and in-season are equally important. You can get away with you can do different stuff in the off-season. Obviously, right programs that I think are better, but you could have gotten away with doing bodybuilding all off-season. Technically, you could have done some powerlifting. That probably would have been better than bodybuilding. You could have had a little more fun with your training. In the off-season, I think you have to be a little bit smarter when you get to the season. Managing fatigue, soreness, so you can play your best. Obviously in season means you're going to be out there playing more. So there's more things you got to manage, more variables that you got to take into consideration when you're creating a program. And when we talk about transitioning from off season to in season, so what we're doing in Lift Heavy Swing Fast right now, and I won't go into like all the nitty gritty because I don't really think we need to in this podcast, but when we go, I've been following like the force velocity curve. Okay. So in the off season, and the force velocity curve on one end is really heavy weights moving relatively slow all the way to moving really fast at the other end. So I like to go in the off season is where we're lifting heavy. It's a very grindy workout. You're going to failure. And your focus is just on getting strong. Always in golf, we're always trying to stay mobile. So there's always that element of mobility in every single workout, in season and off season. But the big bias is towards like more fatiguing, strength training, more volume. In the off season. Now we're transitioning, so we're following the curve, and so we go through strength speed, then you go to power, then it's speed strength, not to be confused with strength speed. You got to interchange those, and then into speed training. So we're like right in the middle of it now. We're in power training, which means we're doing like a moderately heavy weight, and we're trying to move it really fast. And then the next cycle will be lowering the weight again and moving it really fast, and then it'll be like really top end speed. Now, I think it's important that you don't neglect, because I said we're lifting heavy weights in the off season. We're still going to lift heavy weights. Okay. It's just you're biasing towards moving things a little bit faster, and when you do it in the workout. So I still put heavy resistance training in the workout. It's just the main bulk of it is changing a little bit. And then as we get even more like deep into the season, we do contrast training. So you're still lifting heavy, but load management and fatigue plays a massive role, right? Like you were going, really close to failure in the off season, which is very fatiguing on your central nervous system and the body. And then during the season, you're lifting those heavy loads, but you're not going anywhere near failure. So it doesn't feel as taxing to you. You're pairing that with a speed exercise. So you're able to manage your soreness, because no one likes playing golf when they're sore. You're not going to play well, or tired.
That's the worst.
Yeah, you're not going to be sore or tired is not a recipe for great golf, period. And you can still get amazing results not being sore and tired.
Is another way to think about in season too, and just hearing you articulate it in that way, like shorter rest periods, because obviously, again, when you're going to failure and doing heavier loads, like you're taking those more intentional, like 2 to 3 minute rests in between, and like that's a little more breathy in the in season because you're going maybe a little bit lighter, so you can kind of go a little bit quicker, 30 seconds to 60-second rest in between, or like a supersets type stuff, generally.
When we do the contrast training, we will like kind of drop the rest periods down. But right now, since our goal is speed, that is taxing in a totally different way. Yeah. So if you're moving the weight fast, that central nervous system taxing, you have to give that a couple minutes to recover too.
Yeah, true.
So like the last cycle was called strength speed. That was like your 2 to 3 minutes of rest. Kind of cut that down a little bit by like a minute in this cycle and the next cycle. And then when we get really close into speed, that's when we're just going to superset them together, like kind of what you're talking about, where it'll be very low to no rest between the 2 exercises or 4 exercises when we do French contrast training. Yeah. Which is fun.
I just noticed when I'm doing the programming, it's just in general in seasons can be a little just more breathy. Yeah. But again, like from the power perspective, that's part of that too.
Yeah, if you're doing it right, yes.
Yeah.
If you're not moving the weight very fast, it won't be as taxing, and that's one thing that's always very challenging for people getting into mainly in-season programming is like they don't really feel that they don't really feel it as much. Like your body's not going to be as taxed, right? Like you will get a little breathy, but it won't feel like you're not able to do another rep or something like that. So like restraining people, saying, hey, the goal is speed, not doing this until you can't do it anymore.
Do you think ego gets in the way, especially with guys, like in terms of like, because when you do speed training, I think you have to lighten your load a considerable amount to get the real impact of it. And in fact, if you're new to speed training, you probably should, so you can actually know how fast your body can explode in a squat or whatever the movement is.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, oh, well, I'm usually squatting 315. Why the fuck would I take it down to 135?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's actually where you probably, or less or whatever, like to get to that like very explosive, fast movement.
Yeah, and you got to be efficient too. So, obviously you need to be relatively efficient to lift really heavy weights, but you also need to be efficient to move them fast.
Yes.
Too. And I think, right now in our current cycle, I got things in there like thrusters and sumo deadlift high pulls, which a lot of people like. I don't know what my 1 rep max is of a dumbbell of a thruster anymore, especially with dumbbells.
Sure.
I chose dumbbells over the barbell for most people just because it's much easier, and we're not going for like a max load, so you can probably find a pair of dumbbells that fits you, and it's just easier to hold and easier to manage. But yeah, like if you somehow knew, I think CrossFit used to have you do a 1 rep thruster every once in a while.
Not that wasn't a frequent one, but yes, that would be a CrossFit thing to go do.
Yeah, so maybe if you know what that is, we're working at like 50% of that right now.
Right.
50 to 70%. I give people reps and set options. So you could do 5 sets of 3 or 3 sets of 5. Obviously, with the 5 sets of 3, it takes longer to get the workout done because you have to rest between each, and that's where the bulk of the workout will add up for a lot of people is rest intervals, which a lot of programs don't even put in there, like when to rest and how to rest and where to load and things like that. So you're kind of just going all willy nilly and just doing whatever. So yeah, obviously if you're doing like sets of 3, you could probably go for like 70% or something, 65, 70%. If you're going like sets of 5, you're going to be more in that like lower end, the 50, 55%, something like that.
Cool.
So yeah, I think what's important, and what I just talked to a new client I signed up a couple days ago, is in-season training, you have to be really smart. If you're a serious golfer, in-season training can mess you up if you don't do it right, unfortunately. Because if you just go do your same old stuff, and I always pick on bodybuilding just because it's so easy, but if like you're just going to do your normal bro splits and be super sore, you don't need me to tell you that that's going to affect your game negatively.
And it lasts for a couple of days. CrossFit, all those. If you're not doing it right, you're not impacted that day or the day after. You're impacted for several days after.
Right. If you do it right. Yeah.
Right.
So then if you're not doing it right, you're not doing it like,
right.
You're not doing it right.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah, I think, so that's, because people sign up with me for like my elite player program, and like, yeah, I just want to make sure like, this is the right time to make this investment in myself and in my programming, even though it's in season. I'm like, this is the most important time. Because again, you can kind of get away with messing around in the off season as long as you're like training hard. You're going to get results, but we just got to be smart in the in season, especially if you're traveling. If you are someone that's playing tournaments, you've got to really dial it in with your travel, with time changes, with your nutrition, what you have available to work out, how much time you have, how to pair that with your golf and with your rest days. Make sure you're getting all of that in. It's definitely a time to really hire a professional, period.
Boom.